Welcome to our first hot topic of 2020. I'm happy to have us all here today. We have a very interesting speaker, and we're going to hear about everything that people have been thinking about since we've been in our homes since March. It's how COVID has affected our mental health and some things we can do to make things better and what signs to look for if we're really in trouble. And I'm going to turn the program over to Allison Ray, who is the chair of this event today, and she's done a fabulous job, and please give her attention. Welcome, everybody. Allison?
Thank you so much, Elaine. It is an honor to introduce you to Dr. Kelly Jameson. She is a public speaker and a therapist in private practice here in Dallas. She worked with adolescents and adults on life's tough issues. She also speaks at engagements about the intersection of mental health and real life, as she is going to do today. She is licensed by the state of Texas as a professional counselor with supervisor status. She currently serves on the board of directors for the Grant Halliburton Foundation, which is dedicated to suicide prevention and promoting better mental health for children, teens, and young adults. Dr. Jameson is a Kentucky-grown, extroverted last born of 3 girls. She is married with 3 children of her own who remind her daily that you can never truly master the art of parenting. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kelly Jameson. There she is. We can't hear you.
Dr. Jameson, I think you might still be muted. Still can't hear you.
You guys hear me now?
Yes.
How about, got it?
Yep.
Okay, I took my headphones out. Okay, well, thank you for the introduction. I'll start over. Okay, so thanks for having me today. I was just saying it seems silly to call myself a professional public speaker when I'm coming to you live from my bedroom in my house slippers and my jeans today. So anyway, usually I love a good stage and a good luncheon and a good meeting, but here we are. We'll do the best we can from my bedroom. So thank you so much for having me, and I commend you for choosing this topic during this year. You know, being a mental health clinician is interesting all the time, but in 2020, it has made this work so much more fulfilling than it even is in any other given year. So thank you for tackling this tough topic. So I work as a therapist with mostly adults and teenagers and parents of teenagers. So basically lots of mood disorders, personality disorders, eating disorders, basically everything but addiction work. So I don't do any addiction work, but otherwise, if there's a struggle or trouble inside of a family or for an individual, that's my jam. That's where I do my best work. So today I'm going to walk you through a little bit about what I've been hearing as a therapist in 2020 and why, I mean, it's obvious why this is such a difficult year, but I want to kind of get into a few different components of why this is so difficult to everyone's mental health. So, you know, we've all been home since March. So I'd like to say that, you know, people are always asking me, Kelly, how's your practice? How's your practice during all this? And I say, like, I haven't honestly missed a beat. I mean, no one misses their appointments because no one has anywhere to be. And people keep scheduling. Sometimes I've had some teenagers say, I just want to see someone that's not a family member. So they've been keeping their appointments and they've been consistent. And I've gotten plenty of new people, which I'll get into in a little bit. But first of all, I just want to say that, you know, what's interesting is this has been the first time where people are forced to reconcile with their mental health. Now, let's be clear. Everyone has mental health. Just as we all have physical health, we have mental health. But for the first time, we have really been alone with our mental health. We haven't had the distraction of getting to work. We haven't had the distraction of, you know, going to our practices and meeting our friends for lunch and going to the dry cleaners and going to the bank. We haven't had the distractions of life. So for the first time, many people have had to like face their mental health in the mirror and say, wow, this has been a problem that I have been working to deny or avoid, or man, my marriage needs some work. You know, there's a lot of people who have been doing a lot of marital work during this year, and a lot of divorces have been filed this year too, because for the first time, it has really forced us all to stop and think, you know, what do I want? How is this marriage? How are my family relationships? How am I doing this mom thing? You know, we've been alone with our thoughts for the first time, maybe ever. Now, some people who have been in therapy prior to 2020, or they're pretty good about, you know, checking in with themselves, they've done an okay job. But what has been interesting as a therapist is to watch people who have never been to therapy or who have always taken their mental health for granted struggle for the first time with feelings of depression or feelings of anxiety or feelings of loneliness for the very first time. And watching that, I think, as a therapist, has been the most eye-opening experience, because we have welcomed a whole new cohort of people to mental health awareness, and a whole new cohort of people to therapy this year, and a whole cohort of people to really just stop and ask some difficult questions. You know, a lot of us therapists, we get a lot of phone calls from newspapers and news outlets saying like, people need help on how to do this, as if a therapist can just roll out a syllabus on how to act during a pandemic, right? And that's not how this goes. I mean, I hope we know by now in November that no one really knows the answer on how to do this. But I'm going to walk through some things today that I have been noticing that could or couldn't help you depending on where you fall on some of these scenarios. So I'm going to talk about moms first. Moms are really my wheelhouse, because most of the time a mom will call or make an appointment for a child or a teenager. And the truth of the matter is mom needs therapy too. So moms are really good at making appointments for everyone else. And moms are really good at sitting with me and giving me sort of the profile of their child or their family for a good 20, 25 minutes. And the minute I turn the conversation on them and say, well, how are you doing despite of all of this? Or how has this affected you? Immediately, what do you think happens? Tears. There are tears for the very first time, because no one really stops to ask them, okay, how are you doing? Are you okay with this? Because we're just so busy making sure our young people are okay and our other relationships are okay, that it's not until a therapist or someone says, how are you doing in all of this, does a mom really have to be honest about how she's doing. And I'm really, really, really worried about moms. Young people are okay. Teenagers are okay. They're pretty resilient. Men have been okay. Everyone's been okay. Is anyone killing it? No. But I'm worried about moms. I'm worried that moms have taken on even more than we already do take on, and that we're not really prioritizing ourselves. So a lot of times people are surprised when they come to therapy for the first time. And a lot of what we talk about is general self-care. And general self-care and a more holistic approach looks like, well, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? How much water are you drinking? Are you moving your body? When was the last time you saw your primary care doctor? And a lot of people I can tell, or sometimes they just say like, I don't understand why we're talking about like normal body stuff in therapy. And I say, well, this is all connected to mood. So I'm worried about moms, and I'm worried that moms aren't doing just sort of the baseline care that is 100% correlated with your mood. And if anything, we have to work on stabilizing mood during a global pandemic. So I encourage people, if you've never been to therapy before, or you don't know any therapist, welcome. Now is the time to pick up the phone and make that first phone call. And if it's not for yourself, maybe it's for your child or for your partner or for your spouse or literally for anyone, because I promise you, what you see on television is not really therapy, right? Like therapy, real therapy means that you just talk to someone about your life and they ask you questions and look for patterns and offer suggestions. It's not this deep dive into childhood where you just cry for an hour once a week. I mean, it can be, but generally speaking, what you see on TV is not necessarily true, authentic, modern day therapy, right? So, and it, people feel like, well, I have to, well, you know, things aren't that bad. I don't need to see a therapist. Well, listen, girl, it's 2020. Like, it's bad for everybody. You know, if you need to make an appointment, make an appointment. So, mental health for everyone. You know, I'm proud of 2020 and I'm proud of the United States for covering mental health as much as they have in the news cycle. I am really proud that they have talked a lot about mothers. The New York Times keeps posting article after article about the stress of moms in this pandemic. Frontline workers, teachers, I feel like we are chipping away slowly at the stigma of mental health. And as a therapist, I hope if anything comes out of 2020, it's people start to destigmatize mental health, because we've all had a front row seat to it this year. So for those people who never thought their mental health was an issue and that they were all fine, this has really given everyone an opportunity to think about their feelings and their thoughts and how they're really taking care of what's going on upstairs for them. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is who's thriving. You know, remember I said no one's killing it in this pandemic, right? Nobody's killing it. Now, introverts are having a field day, okay? They're not killing it, but they're having a field day, meaning for the first time, our culture has really honored the introvert. And let me tell you, that has never been the case before. Schools, workplace, sort of American culture is more, it's slanted towards the extrovert, right? I think we can all agree, especially our school systems are slanted towards the extrovert. But the introverts are like, yeah, this is our year, right? Like we get to stay home, we get to do what we want to do. This is our year. So introverts are thriving. Extroverts are struggling in the fact that, you know, remember, an extrovert gains energy by being around people. And when they are by themselves, they're depleted of energy. Where an introvert, when they're by themselves, they gain energy, and being around people depletes them of energy. So think about being quarantined. Well, it makes sense that an introvert is majorly recharging during this time, and an extrovert's energy is just depleting during a quarantine. Because we literally get, I'm an extrovert, clearly. We get our energy from being around people. So if we're not chatting it up with people in the hallway and the elevator and at the coffee shop and at the school dropping off our kids, you know, we get our energy that way. So the people that have struggled a little bit are the extroverts who are missing their energy source. And watching TV and scrolling social media is not the same. Like, you're not going to get your energy by just watching people on a screen. You have to share space and you have to share energy with people to get that energy. So introverts are like, welcome to our world. Welcome to our utopia. I don't have to see anybody. I don't have to talk to anybody if I don't want to. I don't have to get dressed if I don't want to. I mean, this is like utopia for them. So interestingly enough, I'm more worried about the extroverts who can't find their energy source. And if you think about the people who probably like broke the rules a little bit in your own friend groups and your own families, my guess is that it's your extroverted family members and it's your extroverted friends who were like, well, we can get together here or we can get together here. It's those really sort of basic personality types that are breaking the rules. And my guess, if I had to put money down on it, I would guess it was those extroverts who are really just out looking for their energy source again. I'm also concerned, and I have coached a lot of type A personalities during this. The type A personality thrives on what? Routine. They thrive on structure. They thrive on rigidity, right? So the type A person has not done well in this scenario either. So a lot of people who have come to therapy for the first time are women who say, these are adult women who say, I'm anxious And I don't know why. Like, I get that I'm anxious because we're in a global pandemic and, we don't know what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. But like, I'm usually more in control of myself than I am now. And I say to them, well, perfectionistic type A'ers thrive on structure. And what does your structure look like now? And they have worked to create structure in their home, but they're missing that external structure that comes with seeing the same doorman every day, seeing the same person at the school, seeing the same person at Starbucks. They miss that, right? They like getting their coffee, sitting at their desk, turning on their computer, checking their voicemails, talking to this person and this person, and all of that structure is gone. And so for a type A person, it feels overwhelming and it really feels scary. So that personality type can slip into some anxiety during a pandemic too. What I tell my type A'ers is, this is temporary. This is temporary. This is a good opportunity for you to work on a little flexibility, but I promise you, your life will get back to normal soon enough. If a type A'r just hears that this is temporary, they tell themselves, okay, I can do this. I can get through this. Because type A's sort of thrive on goals and deadlines. And even though we don't really have a hard deadline on this, the fact that we're saying this is temporary and you sort of challenge them to get through it, they love a good challenge. So if you just frame it up for them and narrate this for them in that regard, they're like, okay, I got this. I got this. But it just takes someone saying to them, your structure is gone. Of course, you're going to feel out of control. And then that helps them work through that a little bit. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is the lack of the carrot. And you're like, what? The lack of the carrot is, we like to put markers on our calendar. We like to know when is Thanksgiving. We like to know what we're doing for New Year's. We'd like to know where we're going for spring break. We'd like to know what we're doing for Grandpa's birthday. These are the things in life. This is what we call the good stuff of life. These are the little things that make all the daily grind and the hard work worth it. Well, what's happened this year is all of these markers have been removed. So there's no longer, homecoming for high schoolers. There's no longer the Friday night football games. There's no longer the concerts. There's no longer the charity luncheons that we all like to go to. All of those things have been gone. And psychologically speaking, those are the things that we look forward to that make the daily grind of work seem okay. I mean, the human experience is about growth and connection, which is my next point. I'm getting ahead of myself. But to grow and to connect is to look forward to the things. Well, if there are no things, we as humans feel really stuck. And that's just not how we're wired. The human experience is not wired to be complacent. And, being on lockdown was cute for a little bit, and then it wasn't. It was cute in the beginning. And Zoom was cute in the beginning, and ordering groceries was cute, and everything was cute. And then it wasn't, right? So we all became very complacent, and then we got mad. And then we got angry, and then we got irritable and frustrated, and then we made it political, right? That is a function of someone putting parameters around our human experience, and they limited our growth, and they limited our connection. And frankly, adults don't appreciate that, and kids don't appreciate that, and humans don't appreciate that. So how do we do this? Well, to make things even more complicated is there's no end date in sight. Now, we're talking today live in November, right? So the big talk of the town is what? The vaccine. The vaccine someone has placed a carrot in front of us, and now we're all just trying to get to the vaccine. And if you notice, everyone's spirits lifted a little bit. As soon as we got that headline last week about Pfizer and the vaccine, everybody perked up a little bit. And I can tell you, even in therapy, talking with everyone, guess what we talked about all last week and this week? The vaccine. The vaccine is the carrot, okay? So we have that collectively to look forward to. But within your own families, and a lot of the questions I have gotten this year is about high school seniors and kids that are in transition, and you're missing graduations, and you're missing things that have been taken away from them that they have looked so forward to. Like, how do you wrap your brain around having your carrot that you have looked forward to maybe your whole childhood taken away, right? And this is where it turns back on parents and it turns back on family members. And this is where some people are going to shine. And this is where we have some people really blossomed, and that is creativity. Now, ask yourself, do I consider myself a creative person? Yes or no? Generally speaking, you're in one camp or the other. This year has really forced parents and family members to be creative in the types of ways that we celebrate or we mourn things that have been taken away. So usually in any other year, we can sort of go and the school is going to take care of that ceremony, and the church is going to take care of that ceremony, and Aunt Jane is going to do that celebration because she always has us at her house. And, we can just sort of lockstep go through the patterns of our family and our life. But those sort of CEOs of those events are gone. So now it is really up to moms and parents and grandparents and sort of like family leaders to get creative in how you're going to honor the milestone, how you're going to honor that person's achievement, how you're going to mark the end of a chapter for them, how are you going to celebrate a new chapter for them. And this is where some people struggle and some people thrive, right? And it's creativity, because what's happening is we have to socially engineer our joy this year. And all the people that we used to fall back and look at, like for them to do it for us, they're not there. So it's on us. So we really have to get creative in what works for our family, and we have to crank up the joy, and we have to crank up how are we going to celebrate this in our own family that makes the most sense with the values that we have in place, with the boundaries we have in place, and with the family norms that we have. What feels good to us? So I've coached a lot of women to say, listen, go home, talk to your children or talk to your husband and say, listen, Thanksgiving is going to be weird this year, right? What do you guys want to do this year, given the fact that, the whole family's not coming over? And you would be surprised at what kids come up with. It's interesting to have that conversation in families and hear what young people say, because they're much more wildly creative than we are as adults, because we have lots of boundaries about rules and, well, that couldn't work and that's too expensive and blah, blah, blah. But kids, it's like, it's open, right? So what happens when these carrots are gone, we have to engineer them in our own families and our own lives. And if that seems like too much of a burden to you, or maybe you're not the creative type and the thought of that completely overwhelms you, I would encourage you to ask your spouses, ask your family members, ask the young people, like, hey, what do you think we should do instead of X? And it might surprise you what they come up with, right? I think it's kind of freeing. For example, we always host Thanksgiving at my house, and I usually have 12 or 15 Jameson family members here, and they're not coming. It's just my 3 children, my husband, and myself. So it's the 5 of us, which is going to be weird because in my adult mind, this is what we always do. I always get this, centerpiece out, and I always do this and I always do that. But I'm having to be creative. So I'm having to talk to my children who are 13, 10, and 8 about, hey, what do you guys want to do this year? The fact that Yaya and Grandpa aren't coming over, right? And they came up with some fabulous ideas. Now, they want to get a jump on the holidays. So for a lot of them, it's about decorating and lights, and they kind of want to jump straight to the next holiday, which is fine. But it's kind of freeing to have the opportunity and the space to do something different. Because a lot of us, we get really lockstep in our traditions. And for 1 year, we get a pass. For 1 year, we get to do something different. For 1 year, we don't have to use those plates. And for 1 year, we can get in the car and go do something and drive around, or go take a hike, or go look at lights, or we can do whatever. We are not bound by the tradition of what we usually do this year, which could be pretty cool, right? Could be pretty cool. Unless you're one of those type A people who are thinking, but that's not right. But we always sit there and we always do that. and we always watch the Cowboys game, and we always, it's like, we always do this, right? So it's an exercise in that rigidity, right? So you might see, and maybe I'm talking about you, maybe you are the type A person in your family and you're thinking, that sounds terrible. I don't want to do anything different, right? This is the way we always do it. So to practice flexibility is to practice good mental health. Good mental health means that you're flexible. It means that you're open. It means that you stay curious, and it means that you continue to grow. The human experience, my opinion, is to connect and to grow, to connect and to grow, right? So the fact that you guys are all meeting here together and that you've stayed committed to this group is bravo. Congratulations. Because what a lot of people are struggling with is the isolation. So even though we're all in our homes and we're looking at each other on a screen, the fact that you've stayed committed to this group is a step towards good mental health for you, okay? And I would encourage you to do it and do more of it, and make sure your family members are connecting with their people too. And here's kind of the beauty of this is now we're looking at possibly a second lockdown, right? That's basically what the headlines are saying. So the first one was a dress rehearsal, right? The first one was, oh my gosh, like, what are we doing? Go buy all the paper towels, right? So we're basically going to get a chance to do it again. So we have this unique gift of learning from what we did in the spring and in the summer, and now applying it how we want to do it this time. So I would ask you, if you were in therapy with me and it was one-on-one, I would say to you, well, if we were to go on lockdown again, what would you do differently? And what did you learn, or what did you really enjoy or take away from the first experience in the spring that you could apply to this one, to this lockdown? Because now, you know, there's a whole psychology. I could talk a whole hour on first experiences. Is when you experience something for the first time, you engage all 5 senses, and your brain really has to create neurons to understand the new experience, which collectively is exactly what we have all done in 2020. We have all had to create a new file in our brain that says quarantine, global pandemic. We did not have that file in our brains before, but now we have it. And we might have the opportunity to do it again coming up. I mean, we hope not, but I like to think that we're better equipped to go into lockdown again because we've experienced it for the first time. And when you've experienced something for the first time, you are no doubt more confident and more resilient the second time you do it, right? Think about riding a roller coaster the first time, or think about, you know, visiting something interesting or scary for the first time. You got a whole lot of feelings about it, right? But the second time you do it, you're a little bit more calm and you're a little bit more in control. And that's basically what's happened here. So in psychology, we call this the stealing effect. And that means whenever you experience something negative for the first time, it feels chaotic and it feels overwhelming, but then your brain has a way of like stealing yourself around it. And really it's just, you know, creating those neurons and creating that file so that the next time it doesn't negatively affect you as much because of the first experience, there's been like a stealing experience. So if we go into this a second time, I'd like to think we will do it better. We will take better care of each other. We will be more connected, and we will understand that it's an experience in flexibility and change. And remember that our little people are watching and our family members are watching. So when I talk to moms who are kind of, you know, falling apart, I encourage them to prioritize their own self-care. And when I mean self-care, I mean mental health. The two are synonymous with each other. And when a mom rolls her eyes at me, when I say, well, what do you do for yourself? Take a walk, go get your nails done, you know, go to Trader Joe's by yourself on a Saturday morning, whatever it is that brings you joy, you have to do more of that, because if mom's mental health is going down, everybody's going down. So I want to make sure that moms are taking care of themselves. And when I mean taking care of themselves, I mean basic functioning, exercise, food, sleep, water, downtime, quiet time. Those are the milestones that moms really need to work on, because we are the emotional pace setters of all families. I'm assuming that most of these women that are here today are moms. So I encourage you to take care of yourself, think about all of those factors, and know that if you're in good shape, your family's in good shape, no matter what we're heading in this next season of this pandemic. Okay. Those are my points. So I want to talk about mental health, personality types, creating the own carrot for your family, shake up the holidays, do something different, brainstorm with family members to get good ideas, connect and grow, stay connected to your people. And I mean like real people on the other end of a phone, not like scrolling, or binge watching everything on Netflix, like real personal connections. And continuing to grow and learn and really see this as a silver lining in a really dark cloud is a lot of downtime. You know, some of the teenagers I work with have been awesome at learning new things. Now, granted, you know, they've got a little bit more time on their hands than we mothers who have like a million things to do. But, you know, these kids are learning how to play the ukulele by watching YouTube videos. They're teaching themselves calligraphy. They're reading books that they don't have time to read during a normal school year. So my hope and prayer is that women and moms are doing the same thing during this time. And I don't just mean clean out your linen closet, but like, what is something that you find joy in that fills you up? Okay. And then also just a reminder that we could possibly, if we have a second chance to do this quarantine thing again, how would you take better care of yourself this time? And if that means picking up the phone and making a therapy appointment for the first time, kudos to you. That is a brave step, but I promise you it's not as intimidating as you think it might be. So thank you for that. That's all I have. I'm going to take a few questions now. Okay, I'm going to take a minute to read some of the questions in the chat. Okay, so give me just a second.
All right, well, I'm going to help with that. And Shannon Morse is going to help with that too. So if you don't know, everyone else doesn't know who Shannon is, she's our new executive director. And so people are going to, so if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and we might, some of them, we might combine them. So Kelly will ask the questions. You don't have to worry about reading them, and we might have to combine them if they're kind of similar. So the first question I am going to start with is, so you kind of talked about this, but what do we do to help the impact of depression on really on our kids, on us, on our parents, on our grandchildren? How do we help the ones that aren't helping themselves, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it depends if people have an awareness of what depression is. A lot of people think they're just in a funk, and they don't necessarily understand what depression is. They just think that they're just sleeping a lot, right? So I think education is the first step. So if you're really unsure what those markers are of depression, you know, a quick Google search in 2 minutes will give you what depression looks like in a child and what it looks like in an adult. So if you're concerned about a family member, I always say, make sure you send the right family member in to talk to the family member or the child. Like, for example, you know, if you're worried about your son, but dad has a better relationship with son than you do, send dad in, right? Like, make sure the right family member is trying to connect with that other family member about possible depression or possible anxiety. Does that make sense? So I feel like if you know your family well enough, you know who's better connected. And that's not a judgment. It's just the fact of the matter. Like, different dynamics in family means that different people have better conversations with other people. So you got to send the right family member in. Otherwise it feels aggressive and it feels judgy. So you got to make sure to send the right person in. But once you decide who that is, then just go in and you want to just straight up say to the person, are you okay? This is what I'm seeing and this is what concerns me. And then you stop talking, and then you let them say what they need to say. And if you find that they don't say anything, you've at least planted the seed. So then you follow it up with, okay, well, if you want to talk, I am always here, or your father is always here. Okay. But remember, family, and this is my mantra, this is what we do as family members, you know, especially if you get a child that's like, God, mom, stop, I'm fine. Right. You always say, this is what families do. We take care of each other. Right. This is what families do. And if you want to go one step further, you know, I like the phrase, in the Jameson family, this is what we do. Because they can't argue with you, you know, because kids are really good at like, well, at John's house, that's not, you know, and it says, so I always love saying, in the Jameson house, we respect, we do this. In the Jameson house, we don't talk when she's talking. In the Jameson house, you always hold the door open. It's like, because they can't argue with the rules of your house, right? So send the right person in, ask the right question, and then leave the door open if they want to talk.
Great.
Okay. So our next question kind of goes to when you're living through tough times. Hold on just one second. When you're living through tough times, is it better to acknowledge them and feel sad or bad, or is it better to look for a silver lining?
Okay, good question. But you're not gonna like my answer because it's both, right? I mean, I was just right before you, I was in session with a mom who's getting a divorce, and there's one child, and she keeps putting on a happy face for her daughter. And I said, listen, if you don't show your daughter that you have good days and bad days, your daughter's going to think she's not allowed to feel sad about this ever, right? So you have to be transparent with your feelings, okay? And that means the truth of the matter is the strongest of people, extroverts, introverts, type A, easy breezy people, this year we have all had good days and we've all had bad days. We've all had days where we're energized and we're cleaning and we're organizing and we feel on fire. And then we have other days where we just can't get going. So to answer your question, yes, it is important to model the range of emotions that we're all experiencing. But if you find that you're having more bad days than good days, then it's time to talk to somebody. And that's really the marker I use with little kids and big people is, if you're having more bad days than good days, it's time to talk to somebody that can help.
Great. All right. Next question. How do you encourage folks to talk to a therapist if they've lost or never had insurance or don't have the financial means for it?
Yeah. Well, therapist is like any other medical profession. There are people that take insurance and there are plenty of people that don't. It's just finding the right resources. For example, I think you mentioned the Grant Halliburton Foundation in my intro. There's something called the navigation line there, and that's just a phone number. It's not a crisis hotline or anything. It's a resource line. So you call and you say, I have United, I have Blue Cross, I'm looking for a therapist for an adult, or you say, I don't have insurance, but I need to see someone, I need to get my daughter in to see someone, and their job is to give you those resources. And it's a one-stop shop phone call so that you're not Googling for 6 hours how to find somebody. But I would not let insurance or no insurance be a barrier to get help, right? There are plenty of people that have sliding scale, that take no insurance, pro bono. There's lots of people out there. You just have to do a little digging, but the navigation line is a great first step. But, the follow-up question, the question I usually get is, how do I get someone to go to therapy who is refusing to go, right? And I'm like, well, then they're probably thinking about therapy in the way that they have seen it on TV. So what I tell people who are usually trying to get their teenager or their spouse into therapy is I say, this is what you should say. Listen, I've found like 3 people that I want you to look at their websites. And if you just go one time and give it a try, and if you hate it, you don't have to go back, or if you hate it, we'll find somebody else. I get so many people into therapy with that introduction because in their mind, usually it's a teenager, in their mind, they think, I'm going to hate it. I'm never going to have to go back. I'm going to go once and prove to her how bad it was. And then they get into therapy and they realize it's interesting or even fun. And then they come back. So I can maybe count on one hand or a few fingers how many times a child came and never came back. Right. So if you just say, just go one time, and I'm a big proponent in like finding 3 or 4 people that you think might be a good fit for this family member and saying, just go look at their websites and you choose one. Now they have a little skin in the game and it makes it easier because they chose that person.
Absolutely. I'm going to share the phone number for the nav line.
Perfect.
It's 972-525-8181. So, all right. People were asking, I saw that. Okay.
I saw a question about how to handle like political talk during the holidays. I just want to like give an idea for that. Someone, actually one of my clients shared this with me, not this year, but a couple of years ago. And I thought it was so genius that I've been telling everyone this year. So it was like, how do we avoid the political talk when there's people in our family that have opposing views, right? So, you know, one of the big strategies for therapy with depression, anxiety, self-harm, grief, anything is distractions. So, you know, this one family, and you can steal their idea because I've been telling tons of people, is they basically asked every person that was coming over for Thanksgiving to send a selfie of themselves, right? So the person had to take a selfie no matter where they were, whatever, just something fun. And then the host, the mom of this house where everyone was coming, she printed out like 5x7 photos of everyone's selfie and strung them in the living room, which became what? It became a major like talking point of the evening. So if everyone comes to your house and it's the same old, you know, pretty table, wine and cheese, like people are just going to focus on small talk. But if you give them something else to look at and talk about, you create a smaller opportunity for them to bring up politics, right? If you keep throwing curveballs at them with, you know, the pictures or the decoration or something interesting that you're serving, if you keep them distracted on new things that you keep putting in front of them, they're less likely to fall back on traditional small talk, which is going to be the news cycle. So I love that tip, and I've been telling everyone that, so feel free to steal it.
Great. All right, so one question we have is, how can we recognize and even celebrate the possible upsides of this situation?
Yeah, so, oh my gosh, you know, I feel bad because I always talk about the downsides as a therapist, but there have been so many upsides of this. Namely, two things really stand out to me is sleep. Everyone's sleeping more. And have you all heard about COVID dreams? Is anyone hearing this word? It's like everyone's dreaming more vividly and more in color, and people are talking about their dreams, and everyone's bringing their dreams to therapy. And, you know, everyone's like, you know, COVID dreams, what's COVID dreams? If you Google it, you'll see a bunch about it. Basically, it's just the idea that we are all sleeping more and we are spending more time in REM sleep than ever before. And that's when your dreams come alive, is in REM sleep. So because we're sleeping more REM sleep, we're all dreaming more. So so that's just an interesting, like, you know, cocktail chatter about dreams. But really people are just feeling better. So as many new people are coming to therapy, the people that have been in therapy for a while are reporting higher levels of emotional satisfaction, basically, because sleep doesn't get enough press. Let's just be clear. Sleep does not get enough press. It is so correlated to your mental health and your physical health that because we've all been home, we have all been sleeping more, which reduces inflammation, reduces stress. We're better humans with more sleep. So one of the upsides is sleep. So you can talk about that at the Thanksgiving table. And then also the other good thing is more family time. Hands down, more family time creates a better family unit. It instills and reaffirms family values and all this good family stuff that we don't get enough of when we're all running around in a million directions. So sleep and family time for me, I think, are the gold stars of 2020 that I think looking back, we will all recognize and appreciate the time that we had, more family time and more sleep.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Dr. Jameson. This has been a wealth of information, and we are so grateful that you were able to join us today.